Good evening.
Good evening.
I hereby call the meeting of the Public Safety Committee to order. On today's general agenda, we have 3 items for discussion. The first item is a resolution authorizing the police department to apply for a community-oriented policing services grant. Item number 2 is a report on the Nitty Gritty Soul Cafe LLC. And item number 3 is a review of the proposed fiscal year 2014-15 public safety budget. Items on the consent agenda are unanimously approved unless a council member or committee member wishes an item to be pulled for discussion. Members of the committee, with that being said, are there any items that should be pulled for discussion?
C4.
Item C4?
C2.
And C2?
Mr. Chairman, if no others, I move for the approval of the remainder of the agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and properly second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Item C2.
Ordinance amending Chapter 42 of the City Code regarding motor vehicles and traffic and Chapter 74 regarding streets and sidewalks.
Mr. McIntosh is recognized.
One of the big reasons why this became an issue was a very specific location in the West End, and I've definitely got feedback from members of council about it being a little too broadly oriented, which I definitely agreed with. And since then, there's been conversation between skaters, neighborhood people, myself, and it appears that we have a workable solution. So I'd like to pull this back, pull it from, and hold it in committee until we finalize those things. But I think it's going to work out, you know, as it should, with dialogue and conversation.
Does anybody have anything to say based on Mr. McIntosh's comments?
That's great. That's what you...
Well, it sounds unanimous. So, do we need a motion on the floor?
Just make a motion to hold it in committee.
Councilman McIntosh.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor?
Aye.
That is unanimous. Item C2 is held in committee. Item C4.
Report on installation of stovetop fire suppressors in residential dwellings.
Councilmember Light is recognized.
I just pulled this because I think it's an extraordinarily important piece that needs to be as part of our ordinances. It could save untold numbers of lives. So I'm very thankful for the work you all have done with this.
Thank you, Councilmember Light.
I'll move approval.
Second.
It's been motioned and properly second. If it's okay with the committee, if the chief could just come up and just give us a quick comment about what this represents and how it's relevant to the citizens of our community.
I'd like to say good evening to the committee.
Good evening.
Chief Bob has come up with me. Coming up, Chief Bob. The department certainly, in lieu of this desire to obtain an ordinance where we could install stovetop fire suppressors, have some objectives that were really important to us. We truthfully wanted to get those installed in every home and require that. However, in lieu of what we've been finding out or found out in our research, some of that's difficult, one, because of building code, state code requirements now, as well as some of the potential feedback that we would be getting from the realtors in this particular area. So we felt the best position to take now was to definitely do the approach that we have, where we have a council-supported voluntary compliance for folks to put these in the homes. And Chief Bob can comment on all those details associated with why we made that final decision.
Chief Owens.
Thank you. As the fire chief talked about, we found that trying to develop an ordinance was kind of problematic. So one of the best things is get buy-in from different community groups, and that's what we're working on right now. We're working with some retailers to try to put these devices on the shelves. I have at least one brand. There's another brand of devices out here. Buy 2 in a package, excuse me. But basically, you right now have to order it online, so we're trying to develop something to get it more locally available, and working with that group, and also working with some of the other community groups that are affected to get it in multifamily dwellings. And cooking fires are the #1 type of fire that we respond to, so certainly anything that we can do to try to curb that or prevent that from occurring, especially in a multifamily situation where you have a fire in an apartment building, for example, and it affects everybody in that building. So if we can put something in place to try to prevent that or curb that, and working in partnership with different groups, I think that's going to be the best approach that we have.
Thank you.
Councilmember Burke?
Yes, now with that, at one time when you started with the smoke detectors, you had a plan where you could give them to some of the families. Now, how much do they cost? Not that the price is important because we want to be safe, but I just want to know.
Right. Well, this particular device is what you would install. You would get this package for a non-microwave setup. If you had a microwave hood, they're a little bit more expensive, but you're looking at between $40 and $50 to buy one of these. Now, quantity, you can get that price cheaper. So if you approach somebody that, say, represented somebody who owned a lot of apartment buildings or something like that, they could buy a large number of these and then put them in all the rental facilities that they have, they could get it at a little cheaper price. But somebody going online to buy one of these or going to the store, you're going to pay about $40 or $50.
Yes, will we have some kind of project where we could donate to some of the families, if you're talking about in families who cannot afford a $40 or $50?
We're certainly looking at that and appropriating some money just like we do for smoke detectors to try and get this out to the public.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember McIntosh?
I have promised Chief Owens that I would get together with the property management division of the commercial realtors, and I have fallen down on that, but I will. One of the things about this is the economies of scale is fairly mind-boggling. And $40 to $50 a piece, but if you buy 1,000, they're like $25. Correct. And part of that problem is that Lowe's isn't stepping up to buy 1,000 and put them on the shelf. So we've got to find a way to pool enough people who want them, and I'm hoping that the property management division and the apartment owners will be that pool to start it off. I mean, I think it's a business opportunity for somebody to take hold of, but just doing it that way, I think, will be very good.
And Chief Owens, I think I read somewhere here that one fire suppressor covers 2 eyes of a stove. So I guess my question is, do they come in packs of 1 or 2?
They come in just like this. They come in a pack of 2. So you could cover a 4-burner stove with this one pack.
Thank you. Councilmember Light?
What's in them? What's inside those things?
It's just like a sodium bicarbonate.
Oh, okay.
It's just a powder that comes out. It's not under pressure or anything like that. It's just gravity.
And something that just, it opens up if it reaches a certain temperature.
Yes, there's a little fuse on the end of it that ignites. It only ignites if you have an actual fire, so if you're cooking and you're using high heat, it's not going to ignite that way. It's only going to ignite when you have a fire.
Oh, okay.
And then it basically just blows the bottom of the can open and the material falls out under gravity. I will point out also, and that's in our report, that we have had a number of saves with these devices. We were fortunate enough a few years ago to get a grant. We worked with the Housing Authority in Winston-Salem to go ahead and get those put in all the high-rise buildings and a lot of the Housing Authority properties, and they have demonstrated a number of saves.
Wonderful.
Meaning that you had a fire, it activated, and it prevented that fire from growing.
I would suggest that the Moravian Church buy a bunch of them to put in the Below house. The fire trucks show up there at least once a week. So
Doesn't sound like a bad idea.
yeah.
Councilmember Burke is recognized.
When a fire starts
Ooh, look.
and it's used, can you use it again, or now it's no good?
No, it's just one time, yes, ma'am.
See, that's what I was thinking. You would need to find some kind of way in some, at $40 or $50. That's sort of expensive. But it's worth it. I don't misunderstand the thing I'm saying.
Has our discussion been expired? I don't believe that this is an item that requires council action. This seems to be just a report. It sounds to me like the general consensus is to move forward. Chief Owens, we appreciate you coming to speak to the committee. Chief Farmer, we appreciate you coming to speak to the committee, and we'll move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Item G1.
Resolution authorizing the Winston-Salem Police Department to apply for the 2014 Community-Oriented Policing Services Hiring Grant to fund 10 officer positions.
And I believe this presentation and report will be given by our police chief, Chief Roundtree.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chairman Taylor and members of the Public Safety Committee. We are asking and requesting for approval to apply for the 2014 COPS hiring grant. There are several categories of this grant for the COPS hiring program. I'm requesting that we apply for funding under the category of homicides and gun violence. Although we saw reductions in our overall crime index for Part 1 violent crime and Part 1 property crimes for 2013 compared to 2012, and that reduction was 4.9% decrease, we did have increases in certain categories. And of course, you are aware that we had increases in our homicide rate. So I'm not saying that we're in crisis, but this is an opportunity for us to apply for more officers and staff to address particular crime categories such as homicides and robberies that we did see an increase in 2013, although we did have an overall reduction. If approved, the objective of these officers would be to provide high visibility. We will also target known chronic offenders, and we will focus on our drug investigations. In addition, these officers work closely with our state and federal prosecutors in law enforcement to ensure successful prosecution. What I would like to do is beef up our visibility again and also use these officers to address drug-related crime issues. There is a direct correlation from our homicides in 2013 where it was a drug overtone. Presently, right now, we have 21 detectives assigned in our Special Investigations Division. 3 of those detectives are full-time task force officers, so they are pulled away in other communities working with our federal brothers in law enforcement on the task force. So with the addition of these officers, 5 going to our Special Investigations Division and 5 used to address other crime issues in our Field Services Bureau, that's my plan for these officers. And I think we can see some reductions in crime in the categories that I mentioned.
All right, Chief, we thank you for coming to the committee with a request. I definitely believe that this is something that we should take a good look at. I know as the police department, as a public safety committee, we've worked together to reduce violent crime by strengthening neighborhood associations. We've talked about moving to the district office concept, and I think this is another tool in our tool belt in order to be effective and to help our citizens in terms of public safety. As a matter of discussion, do any council members or committee members have anything that they wish to discuss? Councilmember Light, then we'll go to Councilmember McIntyre.
Thank you. This is for a 3-year, it's a 3-year grant, and then we have to agree to continue funding it for an additional year.
Yes,
is that correct?
It is a 3-year grant. It's funding for 75%. The city will be obligated for 25%. At the end of the 3 years, the city would be required to keep the officers for at least 1 year.
Thank you.
Councilmember McIntyre.
It seems like a really good deal. They paid, the Fed's paying 75% of the salary if it continues on. I mean, I know nobody has a crystal ball, but the last thing we want to do, and I think we just went through this where we lost 10 officers that were funded through this. Is there any sense of what the continuity is going to be? Again, I know we're dealing with federal government.
Well, we would only be guaranteed for the 36 months or 3 years. As far as any additional years, that would we would have to reapply again.
Reapply. Okay.
I'm going to follow up.
Please do.
When these 10 officers come onto the force, will we bring new low-level officers in and bump people up, or will we hire at a higher level?
These will be entry-level officers, but the officers used for my vision of the, I'll say task force, they would be experienced officers that would go in and work the different programs and projects.
Thanks.
And I know the last officers that we lost were actual positions. We didn't have to lay anybody off due to natural attrition. So I guess, Chief, or I'll direct this question to the city manager, how do we intend to take a look at how we pay for it after year 4?
2 ways. One, we always have a certain number of vacancies, so if there's no way to pay for it, we can eliminate the positions. What I'd like to do is start preparing for that 4th year. If we get that, we're just applying for it. Start preparing for it year 1 and start seeing if we can identify the funds incrementally so that by year 4 It's not all of a sudden we got to come up with $650,000. We did struggle with whether or not to ask council to go after this grant, the chief and I, because of the issue of having to come up with the funding, both the existing match and the future match. But as Chief said, our violent crime and our homicides that are associated with drugs continue to really concern us. So we thought it was really something we just could not turn against if we could get the funding for 3 years.
Councilmember Burke, and then I'll come to Councilmember Adams.
I agree with the chief and the city manager. I think anytime we can get a grant, and in the past we have been able to work things out, and I don't think we should turn it down because it's needed.
Councilmember Adams.
Yes, Chief, I think you remember, I think Monday I said I had a question or two.
Yes.
I read the proposal about what the intent of the grant and the 10 officers, are. But I need to hear from you, basically, the visibility of what this is supposed to do for communities and a basic plan of community safety. It's one thing if we do this. I'm like Councilmember Burke and others. I have no problem with the grant, but I need to know what are they going to be doing. If they're not, my thing. If they're going to be in the car, then you might as well just, I need people out of the car, Chief. And every time you see me, I say that. I just need them out of the car in my neighborhoods. And so if that's going to be part of that, but you're going to tell me something, right?
I will. Part of it will be to increase visibility as written in the documents, but also part of it will be working with our vice unit. Now that will be covert operations because, quite frankly, a lot of the drug operations can't be worked in a standard police uniform, where we have to go in, we have to mingle with and infiltrate different operations. So that's why I'm saying, yes, it will be a visibility component to part of it, but it also will be a covert operation component to it also.
And I thank you for that response. I guess one of the things that we hear on a regular basis, the inner core of the city, is that, again, the relationship with our communities and the police department. I was kind of hoping that this would be more of a cops type thing, oriented policing, to help again bridge that gap of visibility and communication with the urban core. I feel like we can put all of the public safety we want in covert, undercover, and all of that, but what it does for some of our communities is it still lends itself to the perception of mistrust, because they still don't get to do that. They see that one-on-one face that they can identify with. So I don't know where we go with this, but I think every time we have an opportunity to bring more employees on staff for public safety, I still think we need to be looking at our brand and our image of how do we get the communities in the inner core, the urban core, to start trusting and quote-unquote liking the customer service that our public safety law enforcement provide to us.
Yes, I understand.
Councilmember Burke.
Chief, what Councilmember Adams is bringing up, we are supposed to see more visibility. We were told that we were going to see more visibility. So, Mr. Chairman, at our next meeting, we want to know where they are and how much visibility we've had, how many of them getting out of the car, walking, just what she has said. And then also we get these satellite stations where we see more visibility that can be adjacent to the neighborhood.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know we'll discuss the proposed budget, and I think that's what makes the bond referendum so important for so many communities across the entire city of Winston-Salem. And Chief, you can get with the management staff and make sure you prepare a report, and or send us some information in our packets that Councilmember Burke has requested as to where the offices are and where will we see them if we're looking for them on the street. Did that sum it up, Councilmember Burke?
Yes, that would be fine. Do you want a motion on this?
If this requires action, I need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval.
Second.
The motion is second. All in favor, please show by saying aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Item G2.
Report on Nitty Gritty Soul Cafe LLC.
Members of the committee, if without contest, I don't see the owners or the council for the Nitty Gritty LLC. If it's okay, I'd like to take item 3, and we can backtrack to item 2 towards the end of the meeting. I'd like to do that. So without objection, can we do it that way? Thank you. Let's move to item number 3.
Review of proposed fiscal year 2014-2015 public safety budgets.
All right, this presentation will be given by Mr. Ben Rao, who is the Assistant City Manager. Mr. Rao, thank you for coming to present to the committee, and you have the floor.
Good evening, Chairman Taylor, members of the City Council. We have prepared a brief PowerPoint presentation to give you an overview of the proposed 14-15 budgets for police, fire, and emergency management. In addition, in your agenda books, we do have the section, the public safety section from the budget document as well. So to start with the first slide, the proposed budget does include citywide a merit increase and a market pay adjustment. The merit pay increase would be following our current tiered rating system of 1.5% to 3% adjustment based on performance. That averages out to about 2% budget-wise. In addition to that, we're also proposing a market pay adjustment that would provide a 1.5% increase for employees whose pay is behind the average market actual for their positions. And the markets that were looked at to come up with those comparisons included not only the other large cities in the state, but a number of the cities in the Piedmont Triad area, as well as some other medium-sized cities that we still feel like that we compete with for employees. So that's just a brief overview there of the pay proposal. In terms of, first of all, looking at the police department, the proposed budget for police, the total budget is $64 million. It includes 725 positions, 559 sworn positions, and 166 non-sworn positions. In terms of the key highlights for personnel, the proposed budget includes the addition of 2 latent print examiner positions. That would cost $118,000, including benefits. The Forensic Services Division currently has 2 latent print examiners on staff. The police department feels like that we would benefit greatly from the addition of 2 more positions. They've assisted greatly in the investigation of homicides and burglaries. In fact, the checks that they do against databases to come up with matches, those hits as we call them, from 2011 to 2013, the total hits have increased 319%. So we really do feel like that adding those positions has been effective. In addition, in the police department, we've also proposed adding an information systems analyst that would be dedicated to the fire department. The police department basically houses the Public Safety Information Systems Division that serves both departments. So this would be a position that, while assigned to that division, would be dedicated to the fire department. The position would be, the work plan for that position would be developed by the fire chief and the fire administration, but organizationally it would be part of that particular division. The justification for adding that position would include providing more data analysis for the fire department, which would help them in assessing deployment performance, as well as increased utilization of GIS technology in terms of doing the data analysis. And then finally, the proposed budget does assume that the general fund will take on 75% of the cost of our DWI task force. We've received funding for the last several years from the state, but that funding has basically been phased out over the years. The task force currently consists of 6 positions, 4 positions from police, 1 position from the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, and 1 from the Kernersville Police Department. The cost to the city would be about $72,000 to go up to that 75% cost share. So we'd receive 25% from the state, and the remaining 75% we would cover. Next year, what we're projecting is that the state funding will be phased out, and we would be assuming 100% of the cost of that task force. terms of non-personnel operating costs, the budget does include an increase for Microsoft licensing costs primarily for our mobile data computers that are in the police pursuit vehicles. The operating system that they've been using is not very compatible with the Microsoft Office products like Word that they use to prepare reports, and so the proposed budget does include funding to purchase Microsoft operating system so they can better utilize that technology. And then the proposed budget also includes the operating expenses related to the purchase of 190 body cameras. During this current fiscal year, we've purchased 95. We're proposing to purchase 95 more next fiscal year. The cumulative operating impact of those body cameras is almost $263,000. That's for maintaining the video images, the storage, and just maintaining the hardware of the devices. And in the next slide, we'll see the actual capital cost associated with purchasing 95 additional cameras. The police department will be bringing an update to the Public Safety Committee about their policy on the use of the cameras, so that information will be forthcoming. And then finally, we're also increasing the budget for vehicle builds and repairs. At a rate of replacing 40 vehicles a year, we still have over 80 vehicles that have met the mileage or age criteria for replacement, so we are seeing maintenance costs trending up, and so we're acknowledging that in the budget by increasing that area by $170,000. In terms of capital, a number of investments in police equipment, the first one being the replacement of 40 police pursuit vehicles, and then the related equipment that we buy to equip the cars. Altogether, that total cost is about $1.4 million. What we have in parentheses is the actual annual cost. We finance those cars over a 5-year period, so that would be the annual cost to the budget for that.
And Mr. Brown, what is the average life of a police vehicle, whether it be pursuit or no, in terms of mileage? If you don't have it, you can get it to us later.
We can provide that. In terms of age, I think it's about 7 years, but we can get you all that information.
Thank you.
A long time.
The next slide just kind of continues the list of capital outlay that we're proposing to purchase as part of next year's budget. Data storage infrastructure. There are two parts to that, providing additional storage for our crime scene photos, and then also providing some infrastructure for our off-site backup storage. Right now we have what's called a local area network with the sheriff's office, and our off-site storage is actually in the Phillips building in the sheriff's office, and so we provide some additional hardware to help us in that regard. And then we're also proposing to replace laptops and some desktop computers that have basically the operating systems are no longer supported. They're Windows XP, and so we need to upgrade and replace that equipment. In addition, we're proposing to replace 50 radars, and then purchasing the 190 body cameras. Those cost about $2,300 each. So those are the operating budget highlights for police. We have some additional information about non-general funds that the police department utilizes to meet other needs.
Hey, Mr. Rao, before we move to fire, members of the round table, you have any questions in reference to the police budget? Mr. Rao.
Sir. The next couple of slides are just kind of information. I want to talk briefly about forfeiture funds that the police department does utilize to provide to meet some training needs, other equipment needs. We get forfeiture funds from 3 agencies: the Federal Department of Justice, the Department of Treasury, and then from the state in the form of controlled substance tax receipts. The federal funds fall into certain categories of use, basically specialized training, supporting our K-9 unit, purchase of equipment, investment in youth programs, and then also the use of some of the funds for what we call informant funds. And then the controlled substance tax receipts we've used in the past to also purchase equipment. Those funds are intended to not replace the local dollars that we provide to police, but to help enhance what we have. And then the next slide provides just briefly a list of the current grants that we do have open. The Justice Assistance Grant that we've used to purchase equipment, the DWI Task Force Grant that we talked about earlier, that's funding that the personnel and the equipment in that unit. We do receive a grant from the federal government to purchase bulletproof vests. Recently, we received a forensic science improvement grant to help us with purchasing equipment for our forensic services division, and then a grant from Target Corporation to help with a holiday program, and then finally a victims assistance grant. So moving on to fire. The total proposed budget for fire is $26.2 million, and that includes 343 positions. Two kind of categories we wanted to focus on in terms of the highlights. First of all, the investment in safety and response equipment. First is basically the phase 2 replacement of our self-contained breathing apparatus. A couple years ago we did a first round of replacement, and now we're proposing to complete that, so we'll have new units for the department. In addition, we're proposing to purchase 321 sets of turnout gear. That would give every firefighter a second set of turnout gear, so that if they respond to an incident and get wet, that gear can be dried out and they can use a fresh set of turnout gear. Then we're also proposing to purchase 43 radios, 43 new radios, that would then provide a radio for every seat on a fire truck. It would improve our communications when we respond to an incident, so that all the firefighters can communicate with each other, so there would be a benefit in terms of the safety of our firefighters. So we're proposing to invest in that equipment. And then finally, based on our replacement schedule, we're proposing to purchase one fire engine, or we sometimes call it a fire pumper. Those trucks we usually finance over a 10-year period, so that $55,000 is the annual payment. The total cost is a little over $500,000. And then the second category of investment would be our information systems enhancements. A few investments there. Manpower scheduling software would be the first to help better manage or more efficiently manage our coverage, our scheduling, so that it could help us control our overtime in terms of assigning firefighters to stations when we have firefighters who are on vacation or on sick leave. So the ability to better manage our scheduling there. We mentioned earlier the addition of the information systems analyst. And then finally, the purchase of a fire service terminal upgrade that will help us improve our access and use of our fire records management system. So those are the highlights for the fire department.
Any questions on the fire budget? Ladies first. Well, Councilmember Light.
No, I was just pointing to him.
Okay, really? All right. So you must be the man, Councilmember McIntosh.
So we're replacing one fire apparatus.
Yes.
How would you characterize the condition of our fleet? Where we should be? Are we behind? Are we ahead?
I would say that we do have a schedule. In fact, I think we reflected in the CIP where we do try to follow that. Where when we replace a truck, it's met that age or mileage criteria. But I guess I would have to defer to
My
fire
question, I
staff.
guess, stems from the fact that I know we've been pinching pennies for the last number of years. Hopefully, I mean that's a big deal there. I would think. Hopefully, we're not way behind there. I think so. Good.
Mr. Rao?
Yes, sir. And the last slide, the final slide, is just a highlight on our emergency management department. The total budget for that is about $519,000, and it has a staff of 5 positions. This operation is funded jointly by the city and the county, so the net expenditures after we do receive an annual grant from the state. After you take that into account, the net expense of that operation is split 50% between the city and the county. What we're proposing for this coming year is the replacement of 2 vehicles, 2 SUVs in that operation that they use for administrative and emergency response capacities. So that's the proposed budget for police, fire, and emergency management.
Are there any questions in terms of emergency management?
How do you buy 2 cars for $10,000?
That is also the annual lease payment.
Oh, lease.
So it's really a little over $50,000.
Ben's a
in
really
total
good
cost.
negotiator.
Are you finished, Councilmember Light? Councilmember Adams?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mr. Rao, I know it's not on the budget, but I remember when they gave us their report a few weeks ago, and there was the mention of a response system I don't know where we are on that. I was expecting, I know you're going to bring us some information, but in the light of how important it is, I would like to know some more about that, whether you get with the manager. But we need to see that, especially with the tornado, hurricane season, and ice storms and everything. I like to see that. Okay?
And that's the web EOC software. We intend to bring that back. And the challenge we've had in the past is the county, but we intend to bring that back to this committee with or without the county.
Thank you.
Okay. Are you satisfied, Councilman Adams?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair.
Councilman Burke.
Yes, I was going to say, Mr. Chairman, members, that I don't feel at times we really give our emergencies office what it needs. I would like to say at one of our meetings that we had with people across this city, fire, police, county, the universities, and the school, that Mr. Settle did a very good job, Mr. Page, working with us to bring to us, are we really safe? Are we prepared? Can we really do the job? And I always look at the amount of money we have in that budget. And I heard you say that the county as well as the city put the dollars together. But the overall budget for that emergency management with the city and the city, what is our?
The total budget for emergency management is $519,000.
Okay. And we have how many employees?
5.
5. Are we safe?
I think we're safe. There are two issues that we're working on. One is the software. The other is their actual facilities. It's been something we've talked about for a long time. As part of the renovation of the Public Safety Center and the completion of the Beatty building, Mr. Turner's working with them on relocation, right, Mr. Turner? So.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I don't know where I'm going with this, but I just want to say, if you look at what's happened in other cities and other states, the one thing that we have to be is prepared for an emergency.
Ready.
And I know, from the Emergency Management Committee, that Mr. Sadler and his crew are prepared, and we want to make sure that we're funding them in every way that we can to ensure that they are prepared to serve our citizens. So, Mr. Manager, it is your opinion and thoughts that we are prepared in the case of emergency.
The staff is highly trained and very professional, and we do lots of training with the staff. Again, the two things that I said we need to increase is both their facilities and their software, and we will be coming back to council and this committee on both.
Thank you. Councilman Adams?
Thank you. One more thing, Mr. Garrity. Compared to other cities our size, do we have adequate staff? You don't have to tell me that now. Just, again, bring me the breakdown, the Pareto of what other cities in North Carolina have when it comes to their emergency management.
Mr. Sadler probably has it right with him, but we will get it for you.
All right, if there are no other discussion on the emergency management budget, does anyone wish to be heard on the entire public safety budget at large? And it's $65 million, isn't that correct, Mr. Rao?
That's for police.
65 police. How much is the entire public safety budget?
100 million.
60
I know at one point in time it was 75.
and 26.
It's about $91 million.
Yeah.
91. It is official.
Yeah, and
Councilman
Mr.
Burke?
Chairman, I need to say this, and I've said it so many years, we don't ever want to put a price tag on the safety of our citizens in this community.
Absolutely.
And we don't want to cut corners.
That's right.
And that's why I have said we need to look very carefully at what we provide to keep this city safe and how we pay our employees. And I've been saying through the years, we train them well. And the training that we use taxpayers' dollars, then before you know it, somebody's looking at our police and they're going other places. And it's getting to be more competitive. And so I think that some of the recommendations that the city manager has made in evaluating and looking at where we ought to be, I think we need to be bringing our Winston-Salem Police Department, our fire department, our emergency management up to where they need to be.
And I agree with Councilman Burke before we move forward. This is a wonderful step in the right direction as far as market pay and paying our employees what they're worth. You hear me say it all the time. I think it's important as a city that we continue to retain and attract the brightest and the best, and I believe this budget puts us in a good way in order to continue to do that. With that being said, we move forward with,
I need to say one other
please say what you need to say.
I did say to the city manager when I have heard some of the employees in the city complaining because of where we're trying to carry our Winston-Salem police and fire, our police department, at a higher level. And they're the ones that make it safe for us to sleep well at night.
Absolutely.
And whatever we're going to have to do, we're going to have to do it. And some of the employees who may have their problems, Mr. City Manager, let them know that I don't think we ought to be hearing about what they're not getting. They need to keep in their space and stay out of your space as the manager of this city.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And while we're on the subject, we are proposing a tiered merit pay increase. If you could just discuss that, Mr. Rowell and Mr. Garrity.
Yes, sir. It's the range is 1.5% to 3% based on performance. So a solid performer would get a 1.5% adjustment. A strong performer would be 2%, and then a top performer would get a 3% adjustment. So that would be, and then the market pay adjustment would be on top of that merit pay adjustment.
All right, and we're looking at raising the salaries to at least 1010 for all city employees, including the merit tiered pay increase.
Yes, sir.
That addresses that, Councilman Burke. So we'll move forward to, this is not an action item, so we're just for discussion. So thank you for your presentation, and we'll move forward to item G2. Madam City Attorney, if you'll read that again for us, please. City Secretary, excuse me.
Report on Nitty Gritty Soul Cafe, LLC.
Attorney Carmen is recognized.
Just for the record, the owners were supposed to be here. It's my understanding they had committed to the attorney that they would be here. The attorney did not advise he would be here, but the owners would. So I just want to make that clear. We're expecting the owners of the cafe. And we can go forward with the report now, or if you want to, we can see if they can make the July meeting. It's whatever you all want to do.
What is the consensus of those at the table? Do we want to move forward or hold it to July?
Yes, I think, well, to me, I would hold it, and let's see how interested they're going to be in their welfare also.
I'd prefer to hear from the owners.
Yes.
Okay, well, it sounds like it is unanimous. We'll wait to the July meeting. And Madam City Attorney, it sounds like the direction we want to go is if you contact council or the owners and of the council and request that they be here at the appropriate and appointed time. That appears to have exhausted the consent and general agenda. I have promoted you to council member. Chief Farmer, please.
You don't want the job.
I was going to say.
I'm not coming to those seats.
I use that word promoted loosely, by the way.
Yes. I'd like to say good evening one more time. We have a new staff member that you haven't met formally tonight. Chief Frank Stowe has been promoted from battalion chief to assistant chief, and he will come up and introduce himself. Very fine young man, been with the department for about 27 years, and he is one of our new assistant chiefs.
Thank you. Assistant Chief Stowe, it's customary that you introduce yourself and give us a few words.
Yes, sir. Well, I want to say good evening to you all, and thank you for this opportunity. I am Franklin Stowe, been with the city of Winston-Salem now for 27 years, 27 good years. I was just extremely blessed and just overwhelmed when I was promoted to the position of assistant fire chief. As I started with this city, my goal was that I'm not going to keep on having all of these people tell me what to do. And so as I progressed in my career, I said, I'm going to reduce the amount of people telling me what to do. And eventually, I'm going to get to a position where I'm not just a driver of the vehicle, but I'm going to command where the vehicle goes. And that's where I am now. And I look forward to doing that. This is a great city. We work with a great department. We have a great fire chief, very knowledgeable fire chief. He loves his department, and he loves his team. So as I said, I look forward to continuing to work with this city. I look forward to serving the citizens of this city, and I promise you I will continue to do you a great job. And I thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Chief Stowe.
Congratulations.
Councilman Burke.
He also came from the big city of Mecklenburg, Charlotte.
Right. The QC, as they say, Charlotte, North Carolina.
We won't hold that against you here in Winston-Salem.
By way of Winston-Salem State.
All right.
And one thing I noticed is that he is a church man. I visit that church, Gola, and he works very hard in the church. And I noticed quite a few of our people in the city, whether they on the west or the northeast. They're involved in their churches. And when you're in the public safety, you have to have God in front.
Amen.
Because it's a job that's not easy. And when our people leave in the mornings from their homes, their families in prayer until they come back. And we are too. And I thank you.
Assistant Chief Stowe, we thank you for all of your past service, all of your future service, and congratulations again on your promotion.
And thank you all very much.
Thank you.
And I don't want to keep saying something.
Councilman
because
Burke?
I told you I was going to be leaving, and you said if I don't do it well. On Saturday, this was an occasion in this city that a person who'd been here for 32 years passed. Our city became an international known place on Saturday. And I would like to say that the celebration was wonderful. The Winston-Salem Police Department, the Forsyth County Sheriff's Department, they worked together, and our city was safe and sound. Chief, I said to somebody I was going to ask, did we hear anything out of the way?
Not I'm aware of.
No, we don't want to hear anything. I mean, everything was wonderful and fine. Everything was fine, and thanks to your department and the men and women who stood and how well they looked and how professional they carried out their duties. I had the opportunity to meet Alderman Ernest, who's passed, Ernestine Wilson's grandson, Burbank. And he came up to me and he said, my grandmother was an alderman. And I said, yes, your grandmother was the first female, I'm talking about women, I keep letting them know, to be an elected official at the local level. And I said, and she worked hard. And she sort of took my son when he became as an assistant DA, and she was working with the victim's assistants, and she took him under her wing. And when his child was born, she made him a nice throw for the baby, and he would visit her off and on. And so I said to him, we just want folks to know that she did set the tone for women to feel that I too can be in a position. That's one of the young police we have here. We're going to keep our eye on him because I know his grandmother's looking at him. Burbank, he hadn't been with us too long, has he? Fine, thank you.
At this time, I'd just like to take a really quick privilege to thank everyone who helped to make this weekend a success. It was a wonderful celebration of life for Dr. Maya Angelou. Thank you to all of the staff, Chief Farmer from the fire department side of things, Chief Roundtree from the police department side of things, Mr. Sadler from the emergency management perspective, the sheriff's office, and Wake Forest Public Safety. Everybody did a wonderful job, and you represented our city extremely well. If there are no other matters of business for the good of the order, I would hereby consider this meeting of the Public Safety Committee to be adjourned. Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. City Manager.